Welcome into another episode of Preacher in the Hat. My name's Eric. It is great to have you with us. This is the lasagna edition of Preacher in the Hat.
Lasagna edition?
Our producer, Chris, kept sending texts this week. I don't know. I just wanted to blast that out.
No,
on
I think
him on air.
it needs to be publicized. His idea for a new episode was us on camera eating lasagna.
As I said,
Pure cinema.
as I said in some of our interactions, for a moment I thought the name of this podcast was Foodie in the Hat. Yeah. And or
Chris
maybe
would
Lasagna in the Hat. But
Chris
Foodie
would
in
be
the
down
Hat
for.
makes
You'd be
sense.
down for a spinoff, right? If we did Foodie in the Hat.
Yeah.
He said something about it would be a great
He was
spinoff.
particularly ignited by the cake that he had delivered at the beginning of last episode. And I think that got the wheels turning for him.
I would say if we did lasagna tonight, it'd probably become a thing. You know what I'm saying? Like every
I just don't want
week
to
it'd
hear
have to be
somebody
some kind of food.
Who wants
we
to
would-
eat lasagna in front of a microphone? This is-
Every single one of you who are listening and or watching right now, which I'm not exactly sure what would be worse, listening and not knowing what's going on or actually having to watch that.
yeah.
Well, we would lose every single
Yeah,
one of
there
you.
would be no one.
So none of you left if we had a lasagna episode. Thankfully, that's not what we're doing.
I did learn something new about Dad, though.
What's that?
That you don't like lasagna.
Well, yeah, that's fair. In other words, saying it's not one of my favorite foods for sure. Is it something I would eat? Yes. Are some lasagnas better than others? Of course.
You
But
can
if
say
you
that about
ask me
anything
what
now.
would you like to eat, you'll never get the answer, oh, please, can we have lasagna tonight?
This might
So it's
require
that
some
kind of deal.
transformational
Yeah,
prayer.
Yeah,
that's the
okay.
kind of deal. So, yeah.
I didn't know that.
I
Never
didn't
knew that.
either.
Mom made lasagna growing up, right?
She did.
Yeah.
She did. I ate it.
Out of
Your mom has
respect.
some of the best lasagna ever. But for me, that's not saying a lot. So
Just lose a little
Moving right
respect,
along.
You know what I'm saying? You just-
I
you
know.
just
Yeah,
lose a
you
little
think you know a person.
there's surprises yet in it.
Yeah. Anyways, so we won't be doing any of that, but we are coming off a cool episode. Which, talking about this on air, I'm hoping it's the last one that you saw, where we had a really cool time with our guest Greg Leday. So that was really good to have him on with us. I hope you've been able to get involved with some of the stuff we got going on there out there in social media, and you can visit preacherinthehat.com and join us on Facebook, YouTube, our super cool newsletter on Substack, and all that stuff. Everything you need or everything you might be looking for, you can find on our website right there. So we've been having some cool interactions on YouTube and all that kind of stuff. So we're real excited about all the stuff that's happening here at Preacher in the Hat.
Great job on the newsletter.
Oh,
Episode
thanks.
companion. Love it. Very good.
Those have been a lot of fun, and getting
Yeah,
some decent
excellent.
response on that too.
Excellent
So,
job.
yeah, I appreciate that. We wanted to jump into a super cool. So the topic for tonight kind of came about is sometime in the last 24 hours, and we have quite a few episodes in the bank, or I should say, in our bank of ones that we may do, at some point down the line.
Yeah.
Ideas in the bank.
There's a substantial list.
Yeah, that we're ready to do. And this one actually came up sometime in like the last 24 hours and bumped all the way to the front of the line. Mm-hmm. So
It's that good.
it is that good.
Have we done that before?
Not much.
Not that quickly. We've been relatively scripted up to this point. Scripted. I mean, as far as what ideas come after, which episode comes after what.
Well, following our discovery that some children like our podcast, it would only seem right that we could jump one with a kid.
That they get a little input.
I think so. That's cool.
Derek, why don't you tell us where we're headed?
This is a podcast partly about family.
That's true. That is true.
We do include that in the descriptions.
We
Yeah.
do. We do. That's right.
My 4-year-old is at the age where he talks all the time, like nonstop, and which is really cool. Yeah, I mean, one of those things like it's fun, I guess, because he's always talking about what he's seeing or just nonsensical. It could be whatever. He has gotten exposure to more of not necessarily the Bible itself because he can't read yet, but like the idea of Jesus dying for our sins and all that sort of thing. And he goes to a preschool, a Christian preschool that we love, and they teach that kind of stuff. He gets it at church and all, and then at home we like to make sure we're talking about that stuff with him. But in one of his ramblings, yeah, that's probably the right word. One of his ramblings the other day, I know Eric, you had asked if I had prompted him on this, but he was talking out of his own volition. Like, I did not ask him a question about God. I didn't ask. He just starts going in on telling me all of the places that God is. So he's given all the God's in your heart. Jesus is in heaven. And just naming all these places. And he starts and he's like kind of naming them. I don't even remember all of the places that he said. But at one point, then he just stops and he goes, he's all over the place. And I was like, number one, that was really cool. I got like a little, I have a little notes in my phone that I keep up with, like things that some of my favorite things that he says, and I'll add it to when my daughter gets older and she's saying stuff. Like, I keep track of I quote it, he said it on this day, like that sort of thing.
That's cool.
And so I immediately go to that note, and I'm like, Isaac, he's all over the place, put the date stamp on there. And then I texted the two of you.
Yeah.
Because we've done some of that before whenever they say like cool things like that. And I told y'all what he said, and I was like, hey, how's that for a possible like episode title down the line? And but then it turned into not down the line, like
Do it.
tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
Let's do it.
But it's really cool and rewarding as a parent to hear that from your child, knowing that, and he asks questions now like that you would be, that like on the surface seem like not good. You know what I'm saying? Like, he'll say, Dad, is God bad? And you're like, no, God's not bad. He's like, Jesus is good. Like, yeah, Jesus is good. And but it's like, he's like churning through this stuff in your mind, and you really get a picture of how kids can get, how people can grow up with like distorted mindset about anything, not just God or whatever, because if you don't provide those affirmations and those confirmations to their questions, then it's like, it can go wide open. So, so it's been really cool to kind of see him start to understand some stuff.
Say it again, because I kind of soaked in what he said a little bit, within the last 24 hours when you sent it. Just say it again.
He paused after the big long list
Yeah.
of things that he had said about where God and Jesus is. I think he may have used both of them and just said, he's all over the place.
If you stop for a moment, I thought about it today. Do you know what adults mean when they say that? It's almost like that's not a positive statement on a kid.
Well, so like you think about it, like they use it, and I thought about it in the terms like athletically.
Yeah, he's all over.
And a pitcher who's all over the place means he can't find the strike zone. It means he's walking guys and all that stuff, whatever. But for him, he's just saying like, Jesus. Is all over.
It was fantastic.
Jesus is all over the place.
What he's
everywhere.
all over the place.
He's everywhere.
I love that.
Yeah,
he's all over the place. And how we sometimes say it, but in this case, that is really, really cool.
Yeah.
The way he said it.
And so I followed it up. I was like, you're right, man. He's everywhere. He's everywhere. It was so cool. And I think we immediately went on to something completely unrelated, but he was it was just it was a really cool
Really
moment.
cool. He's all over the place. I like that a whole lot better to say he's omnipresent, which adults would say. If the 4-year-old Isaac would have said he's omnipresent, I'd be like, what in the world are you talking
Well,
about?
number one,
He's all over
he
the
wouldn't
place
know
in
what
life.
that meant. And
number
two,
two.
I know he would just be repeating something that he already
That's
heard.
exactly right. That's what I
And not
mean.
knowing what it
That's
meant.
what I mean. This was not him parroting something he heard so much,
It was truly like as he was going through that list, he ran out of things.
Yeah.
And was just like, there was nothing left. He's like,
He's all over the
he's
place.
all over the place. He's like, I can't think of anywhere else. He's just,
I've talked
you
to
arrive at
people.
that.
When I think about that, I've talked to people who have been in tragic situations in their childhood and other places, and one of the cool things that happens in their healing of that trauma is when they learn that he was there.
Mm-hmm.
He was there in the middle of it to help them, and it's like it's a revelation. And then they go, he was there, or like he's all over the place. He was there too, So that phrase is actually a very healing phrase sometimes for some people when they for the first time in their life they look back and they see the hand of God in their life all their life, which they had never seen before. And here's the 4-year-old. He's not an adult looking back at it. He's a child looking forward to it. How cool is that?
Yeah.
How cool is that?
yeah, that's great.
I love it. I love it. And it reminded me right away about Isaac and going to the hospital, rushing to the hospital to be with you, Derek. Actually, I don't think you were at the hospital at the moment. Catherine was. Mm-hmm. One morning when I'm in the car and Isaac is trying to come early. Now, we might have alluded to that story before, I don't know, but the story was, how many weeks was it that when he first...
It was almost exactly 24 weeks.
24 weeks.
So like right on the cusp then, and I know it's crazy, it increases every year, but I think at that time in 2019, that was like right teetering on the edge of what they call viability.
Yeah,
so
it
basically
was.
saying like at that point, 24 weeks, if they are born, then it's like a flip of a coin, 50-50 that they survive. And then of the 50% that survive, probably another whatever percent of those have long-term health issues caused by, so it's just like one of those things that it's not good. It's like,
So when he was 24 weeks in the womb, Mama started having contractions.
Yeah.
And they continued to increase and continue to increase. And it didn't look like, medically speaking, they were going to be able to stop them, even though they were trying and slow it down. It didn't mean that they didn't help medically, but
yeah, they were trying for sure, and
yeah.
but they never make, they can't make any promises because
That's correct.
they'll tell you like, hey, we do stuff that we're doing stuff that maybe typically does or gives you a better chance. But if you're looking for a doctor to come in and say like, oh, we got him, like the baby's not gonna be born. Nobody's gonna be there to give you that confirmation because they just don't know.
So in that moment, my hat was Papa, and I was headed to the hospital to be down there. And I turned off our street, Main Street in Birmingham, Alabama, on Alford Avenue, turning on to the interstate on 65 South, headed to a hospital called Grandview. And I was worried. Mm-hmm. I was concerned. I was
You and me both, buddy.
frustrated. I know that. Not near. I got you. I know I'm not. I know I'm not. I'm not even the primary one here, but I
still,
was
no,
one.
yeah.
And I was talking to God about being there at the hospital and being there with Isaac and being there with you guys and being there. And I'm clear. I'm telling you, I turned the corner on I-65 South and I can still see it in my head. And as I turned, I had a picture of God and his clear communication to me, obviously not audible, but loud. Okay, you might hear me use that phrase sometimes. Sometimes God speaks not audibly but loudly, And he spoke loudly and said, I'm already there. I'm already there. You know, I'm praying, oh God, like go to the hospital. You know what I'm saying? Like go quickly into the room, go quickly. Yeah. But when I turn that corner and I'm talking that, and I've still got another 15, 20 minutes to get there. Not that I thought nothing could happen, you know, that it will only happen if I got there. That wasn't the point. And he said, I'm already there. I cannot tell you how much that calmed me down. I'm already. So when I heard you tell this story immediately, I remembered that story about the boy that now uttered that word, those words 4.5, 5 years later, almost 5 years later, not quite. He was already there. I'm already there. That was true.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that time a lot, maybe too well, but I to kind of shift back just a little bit. Tonight, I decided to ask my son, who is also 4, the same question about. You know, I was like, buddy, I want to ask you a question while we were eating dinner. And he's like, okay. He kind of got excited. You know, he wanted to hear a question, and then I was like, so where do you think God? Like, where is God? And usually when I ask him questions like that, we'll say, where is God? Where is Jesus? You know, in his mind, kind of, you know, he's just like both of those, you know, and of course they go hand in hand, but, you know, we kind of give him the opportunity to, you know, to think, about both of those kind of things. So ask him that question, where do you think, where is God? Where is Jesus? And so the first, his first answer was, in heaven. I was like, check. Yes. Where else? And his next question is, as we're on the off the heels of Easter now, here in April, as we're recording this, was in the tomb, and I was like, yes, but yes, check, you know, check. And then his third answer, he kind of was thinking, is like, he's, you know, almost like, all right, he wants another one. I got to come with one more. You know, it's like he kind of had the extra special pause for his third answer, and he was like, with us. Oh. I was like, yes, absolutely, with us. You know, I didn't tell him at the time. You know, it's like, but I mean, that's really the same answer. And you know, one of his names, you know, Emmanuel, essentially means that, you know, that he is with us. Just really cool. To kind of pepper him with that question, and you know, just kind of see where those wheels are turning. And I know a lot of people would like to credit answers like that to a 4-year-old parroting what, you know, things that they've heard. Yeah. But you might want to dwell on that a little bit.
I think so too.
Because there's a lot of things I could say, having a 4-year-old myself, about the way that they answer the way that he answers questions, and you know, and that sort of thing. You know, if you want to just chalk that up to this is what you've been teaching him to say, I've never asked him that question before. Yeah. I've never asked him where God is. This is the first time I've asked him like that specific question, where is he?
Yeah. Well, and so Jesus answered that for us a long time ago, and he said we got to be like a child. And I think the first thing that comes to my mind is simple. You know, both in in his answer to you, and in Isaac's response to that same thing, is it was simple. He's everywhere. Yeah. You know, or with us. So simple, and so children understand it simply, and I think that's what we're told to do too. Is be simple like they were. Stop being so stop complicating this so dadgum much. You know, I mean, just be simple. Just embrace it in a simple sort of way. And I think that's a lot of what he said. And I think that's why Jesus can communicate so well to children, in my opinion, is because he's very simple and to the point. It's not all, everything he says is not easy, but almost everything that Jesus said was simple. There were some things that were parables and stories and a little complex maybe for people, but not really complicated. It wasn't complicated. It was very simple. Well, we know, like, for example, in this story, and with the idea of the with us, that so Jesus was already there at that hospital in that story. He was already there. And I remember walking in the downstairs, your wife and his mama did not know I was there. But I felt like I had to go. And so I went, and I remember walking up and down there and just praying. And all of a sudden I had this picture that I was supposed to pray, and that was this: God, grab that boy by the ankle. Obviously a boy I'd never met yet. Grab that boy by the ankle and hold him in that womb. Hold him in that womb until his daddy says he can come out. That was a weird prayer. I never prayed that for anybody anywhere ever in my life. But it was simple. It was to the point. Just grab that boy by the ankle and hold him in that womb until his mama says. And it happened. It happened.
And there was probably so at that time, I think we were in the hospital for maybe 4 days,
Yeah.
I think. And then my wife ended up getting sent home on bed rest, for limited activity. Well, no activity really. She was pretty much confined to the house.
Right.
But I think it was probably 3 or 4 days, maybe day 2 or 3. But we were still like not in it didn't feel like we were in the clear.
Yeah.
And I'm super stressed out in hospitals. They just, particularly for the reasons that I've been in there lately, which have all been because of my children who like to stress me out during all that time. I remember we were sitting there and no one else. It was just Catherine was laying up there on the bed. She had all of these monitors hooked up to her. And it's just constant beeping. So you hear in the baby's heartbeat. It's taking her blood pressure. There's some, and then something is beep.
Yeah.
Beep, and you're like, what even is that? I don't even know what that is. But it's like it's not quiet at all. And I was looking out over. We had like a decent view in the hospital we were at, and you kind of like look out over the area. And I just remember kind of like looking out. And then turning back to Catherine, and I had been praying and feeling super helpless because I knew like all of that stuff that was going on, all the people coming in and out of the room. Like I was literally, in a sense, and I don't mean this in a derogatory or negative way, I was like the least important person there, right? If something goes wrong, there's nothing I can do. I don't have the skills to, I don't have a job in the medical field. We'll just leave it at that. So, but I'm also thinking like, this is my first child, and like your instincts are trying to kick in about what can I do? How can I help? And obviously I'm there I'm supporting Catherine and all this stuff or whatever. But I remember just thinking like there's nothing I can do. I want to be there for my son, and I can't be there for my son. And I remember just praying. I was like, Lord, can you hold him? Because I can't. And I got just a clear, vivid image. I turned my head over towards the window and look, and I could see it. Like I could see him holding my son. And it wasn't like this perfectly clear, like I didn't see their faces or anything like that, but it was this vision of a man holding a child with joy.
Yeah.
And he was everywhere. He was all over the place.
That's right.
Doing and so he's not only is he like, we talk about him being with us, he's not just where we are, he's where we can't be. Right. He's where, you know, we don't have to be everything to all people because he is.
That's
right. Whether it's we're celebrating the birth or stressing out because the birth is going to come too early. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, we sing a song at church, you know, I'll praise you on the mountain, or I'll praise you when the mountain is in my way. Like highs and lows, hills and valleys.
That's right.
You know, and I think a lot of time that's where we sort of can sometimes lose our focus is it's so easy to praise him on the mountaintop.
Yeah.
But, you know, giving him praise when the mountain's in our way. We had a mountain in our way, and he was sitting there taking care of my son when I couldn't do it, because he's everywhere. He's all over the place. And
those are such comforting words, what Isaac said. And it was comforting in that moment because he not only didn't just tell you, but he demonstrated he was there. What I love about this is some people say, oh, come on, man, you know, y'all are just making up things in your head. No, when this happens, when you recognize he's everywhere in the moment, it is so powerful that it's so powerful. I mean, it's just like, so our job really is not to make sure he's there. It's to recognize he is. And that's what happened in that moment. I remember loving to hear that story that you told, Derek. We were sitting in the hospital and you said that's what happened. And we were still in the middle of this when you told that story. This was not something you told later on necessarily. This is something you told when we were still in the middle of it and still things could happen. So when you have that sense, it doesn't mean all your circumstances have changed. In that moment, when I was praying, hold that baby in, and you were seeing that picture of God holding him and so forth, we were still in that moment. And but he gave us the ability to recognize he's all over the place, just like Isaac said later. And it seems so cool to me that he's the one who gave us that story tonight.
Yeah, because he doesn't even really notice. He doesn't know it yet,
story.
but he's already lived that.
And
like he's already he's lived the part of Jesus being everywhere. He's lived it, and you know that he'll understand that more as he's gotten older. But like it's such a cool thing to hear, because not only am I saying like, oh, that's great, like you're starting to understand some truth, but also knowing that God has.
So in other words, he didn't say it so he could experiencing it. He said it because he has.
Yeah, and maybe didn't and doesn't realize it yet. Right. But yeah, he's living proof.
Yeah, that's right.
Particularly to me, and I know he'll. We're definitely. I mean, that's a story I'll tell him when he gets older.
You know, recently I talked about a show and tell kingdom. Jesus has a show and tell kingdom. He shows you and then tells you. Sometimes we think it's tell first and then show. Sometimes I think it's show first and then tell. And I think that's what happened with Isaac here. God's demonstrated, showed it to him, now he's telling it. And he doesn't even understand what he's doing. You know what I'm saying? He's not connecting those dots, but we can connect them because we were a part of that story. We were conscious, we were recognizing in the middle. I'm all excited about it.
And that level of peace, like in that moment for you, Derek, was like, how substantial was that?
I mean, it definitely had high impact. Enough for me to, you know, go downstairs and tell my dad.
That's right.
There was... But you also, like, I also knew, or not knew, I didn't ever see it as a guarantee.
Yeah.
God's guarantee that, oh, well, this baby's now going to be carried to full term and there's not going to be any other issues.
Yeah.
So there was still some, like, trepidation. But you have that, it changes your mindset. It doesn't change anything about what is happening, but it definitely changes about who you're looking to, where you're looking for answers, for comfort, for all that stuff. And so it changed my outlook.
Well, and the added grace to that outlook change was that it was 8 weeks later until that boy was born.
Right.
The morning you called me at 5:00 on a Sunday morning, all of our grandchildren want to be born on Sunday morning when I was preaching. I don't know what the deal is with that. But anyhow, you call me and you say, Dad, I think we're going to the hospital. And I ask you the question. And on that phone, I remember it clearly. I said, so Dad, I asked you, Dad, is it okay for him to come because of my prayer? And your words were, Dad, I don't think we have a choice this time.
Have a choice.
And so that boy was born a few hours later, healthy, and is a healthy 4-year-old today.
Yeah.
Still born early.
Born
Still
early,
born-
the first month of his life was spent in
NICU.
in a hospital, between the walls of a hospital.
Yeah.
But I mean, we saw so many things there too.
Yeah.
But there was still pain. There was still,
Yeah, that's right.
leaving your kid at,
Oh.
driving home at night. Yeah. Every night without your kid.
So many people can
Putting
identify.
putting him to sleep and walking out of the room, but then also down the hallway and to your car, and
Yeah.
like there was some painfulness there, and he had some heart stuff that he was working through. Nothing, it wasn't major, but like we had to let that live out, or he had to grow out of that, and so there was still more battles, but at that point we saw what we saw the promise, we saw what God had done. There was no reason to believe that no matter what happened, he wasn't going to be there with us through it.
I like what you said. I like what he said here. What you said about it didn't mean everything had disappeared and everything was hunky-dory. A lot of people in this walk, they think if Jesus is there, there will be no obstacles. That's an important thing to just marinate in for just a minute, is because, this thing of Jesus' presence is not magical in the sense that everything I want happens the way I want it to be. So nobody should get the message, and you certainly were clear about it, Derek, and I like that, is that even in the middle of this, his presence had high impact. Thanks for that phrase. That's fantastic. High impact. And that's what happens. His presence gives high impact. When we recognize his presence, we recognize he's everywhere, it's high impact. Even if the circumstances don't immediately line up the way we want them to. And even if finally they don't always line up the way we intended them, it still does not negate that powerful impact of the presence right there with you.
And there's even more to that story, because I know I prayed for our next child, almost like you think like, all right, God, we paid our dues.
That's right.
Yeah, right.
We paid our dues with the first one.
Good.
Lord, the second one, just let it be, everything that we had hoped the first one would be, and it's going to be glorious, and there's not going to be, and it was it was way worse than what I'm just even describing to you.
That's worth
right
another
now.
episode.
It's worth another
actually.
episode, but I just wanted to, to your point, it doesn't mean that the trouble is over. It doesn't mean that it gets easy, and it might get a lot harder, but you have somebody walking through it with you who said, I'm here every step of the way, and there's nothing we can do about it. He's walking right there with us.
Yes, and I think what's so interesting about that too is that, you kind of mentioned it with, people who have faith in God, but also those who don't. There's a lot of people, who have kind of reduced God to being that, well, if he doesn't he's a circumstance. A God should be a circumstance fixer.
Yeah.
And if he's not that, then he's not God.
Well, and he's of little value to me.
Right.
A lot of people think.
But, ask, and it's that is such a first world view of God, because you go to the ends of the earth, small town India, where the gospel is, at least in some places, is spreading like wildfire.
That's right.
And it's almost like if you strip everything down, they live stripped down compared to what we do. And there's just like a greater appreciation and understanding for who God actually is and what he actually does and how he is everywhere, because it's a little bit easier to see, or it's more difficult in our circumstance and where we live. I feel like in the way that we live, that so much of our lives now is instant gratification, where God showed you in that hospital room that he was holding Isaac, but that's not good enough for me, because you should be telling me right now instead that we're going to go home tomorrow, and my wife's not going to have to be on bed rest, and Isaac's going to be born at 39, 40 weeks.
Yeah.
And, that's what I expect out
Ideal
of God.
scenario.
Right. But but what he offers is not that, that fix it moment. It's that.
So let's give a shout out to a God we serve who said this. In this world, you will have trouble.
Yep.
Just soak in that for a minute. But take heart, I have overcome the world. Or, with this way, is take heart, I'm right there, and I'll help you overcome whatever it is you are facing. But I will assure you I will be there. What if we had a God who lied to us and said, it's all going to be cool, man. When you come to me, all things are cool. And then you go, that ain't true. Matter of fact, I wouldn't be a believer if I had not suffered. Because I would be thinking, okay, this is really cool. I follow God and everything's cool, man, But then I face things in life and have faced them. We've all faced them. And then what happens to us? We get in that situation, we go, he already told me this was going to happen. But then he said, but take heart. Don't let that discourage you. Things may be falling apart momentarily the way you see them, but take heart. I've overcome the world. Wow. I just say thank you for being here. Thank you for being here.
And I just wanted to close with in thinking back to the words that Isaac said. He's all over the place. To another verse, some words that have been painted above my son's bed in his room since the day that he was born. It comes from Joshua 1:9, and a whole lot of people, I'm sure, are familiar with this verse. But be strong and courageous.
Yeah.
Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go.
Wow.
For Derek and Steve, Chris behind the cameras, I'm Eric. This has been Preacher in the Hat. See you next time.